5 foods that calm your brain at night. No one tells you this. If you wake up at night, especially around 3 a.m., with your brain suddenly alert, sleep science explains this is not insomnia. For many people, this moment feels confusing and even frightening. You fall asleep fine, but then you wake up at night without knowing why. Your mind feels active, your body feels tired, and rest disappears. This is where the hidden reason behind an overactive brain begins. What most people never hear is that the brain follows survival patterns at night. When those patterns shift, the brain stops prioritizing sleep. Instead, it quietly switches into a state of alert. This is a real biological response, not a personal failure. Studies show this happens when internal nighttime signals fall out of sync. The brain starts scanning for danger instead of staying in deep rest. That shift explains why you wake up at night so suddenly. In these moments, your brain believes something needs attention. Even if nothing is actually wrong, the response still feels intense. Sleep science calls this a protective mechanism, not a disorder. It is the real reason many people experience fragmented sleep. Once this response activates, staying asleep becomes difficult. And the more it repeats, the more familiar it becomes to the brain. To understand why this happens, we need to look at what changes inside the body next. I'm Dr. Sarah, a sleep medicine specialist with a background in psychiatry. I've spent years studying how the brain behaves during sleep. My work focuses on why people wake up at night unexpectedly, especially when the brain becomes alert during the early morning hours. This video is not a diagnosis of any medical condition. It is not a promise of instant or guaranteed results. It is education grounded in modern sleep science. Everything you'll hear is meant to help you understand your body. Sleep science explains patterns that repeat across all ages. These patterns show up whether someone is young or older. They are driven by the brain and the nervous system. Hormones like melatonin and cortisol play a central role. When these signals shift, sleep can become fragmented. Understanding this process removes much of the confusion. What I see every day surprises many people. Most individuals blame themselves for waking up at night. They assume they are doing something wrong, or they believe their brain is simply broken. In reality, the brain is responding to nighttime signals. This response is automatic and deeply biological. It is not a sign of weakness or failure. Doctors and experts in sleep health explain this carefully. The brain's job is to keep you safe at all times. Even while you are asleep, that system stays active. When balance is lost, alert systems can turn on. This can happen without conscious stress or fear. Studies show this response is common and predictable. That predictability is what makes it understandable. An overactive brain at night is not random. It follows specific patterns tied to circadian rhythm. The nervous system reacts to internal timing signals. Melatonin may drop or lose stability. Cortisol may rise earlier than it should. These shifts tell the brain to prepare instead of rest. The result is waking up at night feeling alert. The important thing to remember is this is reversible. Awareness is the first step toward calming the brain. When people understand the real reason, fear decreases. Confidence replaces frustration and self-blame. This knowledge creates a sense of safety, and safety is what the brain needs to stay asleep. Next, we need to explore what actually triggers this response. The real reason you wake up at night is often misunderstood. It isn't that you can't fall asleep in the first place. Many people fall asleep quickly and easily. The deeper issue is what happens after sleep begins. Your brain struggles to remain in a stable sleep state. This is why awakenings feel sudden and confusing. Sleep science explains this difference very clearly. When people hear the word insomnia, they imagine difficulty falling asleep, but waking up at night follows a different biological pattern. Studies show this pattern is driven by brain activity, not willpower. Your brain transitions out of deep sleep too early. This shift happens without conscious control. It feels automatic because it is automatic. That is why trying harder rarely solves the problem. Experts in sleep health explain something called the 3 a.m. brain survival response. This is a built-in safety mechanism of the brain. It exists to protect you during vulnerable states. At night, the brain constantly evaluates internal signals. If those signals feel unstable, alert mode can activate. This often happens around the same early morning window. The timing is not random or mysterious. The circadian rhythm naturally changes during the night. Melatonin begins to fluctuate in the early morning hours. Cortisol is scheduled to rise later toward wake time. When this balance shifts too early, the brain reacts. It assumes something is wrong with the environment or body, so it wakes you up to regain control. This response does not mean danger is pleasant. It means the brain believes it needs to check. An overactive brain does not wait for proof. It responds based on internal chemistry and timing. That is why the awakening feels alert but not panicked. Your body is tired, but your mind is awake. This mismatch creates frustration and confusion. Once the brain learns this pattern, it can repeat it. Night after night, the same window becomes sensitive. The brain remembers when it felt unstable before. This memory increases the chance of waking again. Understanding this mechanism removes fear and self-blame. It also points directly towards the real solution. To get there, we must look at what actually destabilizes the brain at night. When sleep becomes fragmented, the body follows a predictable pattern. Melatonin, the hormone that supports deep sleep, loses its stability. Instead of staying steady through the night, it begins to fluctuate. This sends mixed signals to the brain about whether it is safe to rest. At the same time, cortisol can start rising earlier than it should. Cortisol is meant to prepare you for the morning, not for the middle of the night. When it shows up too soon, the brain pays attention. The nervous system responds immediately to these hormonal shifts. Its role is to protect and prepare the body. When signals feel inconsistent, it moves toward alert mode. Heart rate may increase slightly even if you do not notice it. Brain activity becomes lighter and more responsive. This makes deep, continuous sleep harder to maintain. Waking up at night becomes more likely. Circadian rhythm plays a central role in this process. This internal clock coordinates sleep, hormones, and brain activity. When the rhythm is disrupted, timing cues lose clarity. The brain no longer knows whether it is night or morning. That confusion creates instability during vulnerable sleep phases. The result is a brain that checks in too often. Each check increases the chance of waking up. From the brain's perspective, this response makes sense. Its primary job is not comfort, but survival. If signals are unclear, it chooses caution. That is why your brain thinks it's time to protect you, not to rest. Even without external danger, the response still activates. This is biology, not behavior or choice. The brain is simply doing what it was designed to do. This is why waking up at night is not your fault. You are not failing at sleep. You are not weak or broken. Your brain is responding to internal chemistry and timing signals. Studies show this response is extremely common, especially in people with sensitive or overactive brains. Understanding this removes unnecessary guilt and frustration. Once this pattern is recognized, it becomes easier to address. You cannot force the brain to stop protecting you, but you can change the signals it responds to. The goal is to restore clarity and safety at night. When signals stabilize, alert mode can shut down. This opens the door to deeper, longer sleep. Next, we need to visualize how the brain interprets these signals. Imagine your brain like a night security system. Its job is not to help you sleep. Its job is to keep you safe while you are most vulnerable. When everything feels calm and predictable, it stays quiet. The system remains in low power mode through the night. Deep sleep can continue without interruption. Your body and brain recover as they should. Now, imagine that system receiving mixed signals. Hormones shift, timing cues blur, and chemistry feels unstable. The system does not analyze or debate those signals. It simply reacts based on pattern and priority. Even if the threat is not real, the response still activates. Safety always comes before comfort in the brain. That is how survival systems are designed. At night, this security system is especially sensitive. There is less external information to rely on, so the brain pays more attention to internal signals. Changes in melatonin or cortisol feel louder in the dark. The nervous system interprets them as potential risk, not danger, but uncertainty, and uncertainty is enough to trigger alert mode. This is why the lights turn on at 3 a.m. The brain is not trying to wake you up, it is trying to check that everything is okay. It increases awareness, focus, and light sleep. Your eyes open, your thoughts start moving. Your body stays tired, but your mind feels awake. That contrast is the signature of this response. Once this pattern happens a few times, the system remembers. The brain learns that this hour may require attention, so it becomes more reactive in that window, not because something is wrong, but because something once felt off. This learning happens quietly and automatically. You do not choose it, and you cannot reason with it. It simply becomes part of the night routine. The key insight is that this system responds to signals. It does not respond to effort or frustration. Trying harder to sleep does not make it feel safer, but changing the signals it monitors can calm it down. When safety cues return, the system powers down again. This is not theory, it is how the brain operates. To do that, we need to understand what signals matter most at night. When the brain enters this alert pattern, sleep becomes lighter. Deep sleep phases shorten and break apart. The body never fully settles into long recovery cycles. Instead, sleep shifts closer to the surface. This makes the brain easier to wake. Even small internal changes can cause an awakening. That is the first visible consequence of fragmented sleep. As nights continue, awakenings become more frequent. The brain checks in repeatedly to confirm safety. Each check interrupts the natural sleep rhythm. Some awakenings are brief and barely remembered. Others are long enough to bring full awareness. Over time, this pattern becomes familiar to the brain. This is the 3 a.m. brain survival response in action. Morning then arrives without true restoration. You may have spent enough hours in bed, but the quality of sleep was incomplete. The body feels heavy and unrefreshed. Mental clarity takes longer to return. Energy feels lower than it should. This creates the sense of starting the day already tired. This experience often leads to frustration and confusion. People wonder why rest no longer feels effective. They may blame age, stress, or bad habits. While those factors can contribute, they are not the full story. Sleep science shows the brain adapts to patterns over time. Fragmented sleep teaches the brain to stay cautious. Caution reduces depth and continuity. This is why sleep changes over time at any age. The nervous system becomes more sensitive to signals. Hormonal timing becomes easier to disrupt. Circadian rhythm loses some of its stability. The brain responds by increasing nighttime awareness, not because it wants to, but because it learned to. Learning can always be adjusted. Understanding these consequences is not meant to scare you. It is meant to create clarity and awareness. Nothing here means permanent damage. These are functional changes, not failures. They exist to protect, not punish. Once the brain feels safe again, patterns can shift. To reach that point, we must introduce the idea of hope. The good news is your brain can relearn that it is safe at night. The same system that learned to wake you can learn to stay calm. The brain is not rigid or stuck in one pattern forever. It adapts constantly based on signals it receives. When those signals change, responses can change as well. This flexibility is built into human biology. It exists at every age and stage of life. Studies show the brain responds quickly when the right signals are restored. This does not mean overnight perfection or forced sleep. It means gradual calming of alert systems. The nervous system begins to lower its guard. Hormones start to follow a more stable rhythm. Melatonin becomes more consistent through the night. Cortisol learns to wait until morning again. This process does not require willpower or effort. You do not need to fight your thoughts or body. The brain responds best to safety, not pressure. When it senses predictability, it relaxes naturally. That relaxation allows deeper sleep cycles to return. Awakenings become less frequent and less intense. Rest begins to feel more complete. Hope matters because fear keeps the brain alert. When people believe something is wrong with them, stress increases. That stress sends the wrong signal at night. Understanding that change is possible reduces that stress. Confidence tells the brain there is no emergency. Calm expectations support calm responses. This alone can begin shifting sleep patterns. This is where desire for a real solution begins, not a quick fix or a forced shutdown, but a way to support how the brain naturally works, a method that respects biology instead of overriding it. Sleep science points towards supporting internal signals, especially those that matter most at night. These signals are simpler than most people think. Before we talk about any specific support, one thing is essential. The solution is not a single trick or habit. It is not about controlling sleep directly. It is about influencing the signals the brain monitors. When those signals change, the response changes. This is the doorway to calmer nights. Next, we need to explain what the solution is not. The solution isn't forcing sleep. It isn't trying to shut the mind down, and it isn't overpowering the body with stimulation or sedation. Sleep science explains that forcing sleep often backfires. Pressure increases alert signals instead of calming them. The brain interprets force as urgency. Urgency keeps the survival system active. The real solution works in the opposite direction. It supports the brain and nervous system. It creates conditions where alert mode can shut down naturally. When the brain feels safe, it chooses rest on its own. This process is quiet and gradual, not dramatic. Nothing is pushed or overridden. The brain simply returns to its preferred state. One key part of this support is the circadian rhythm. This internal clock tells the brain what time it is. Light, darkness, and timing cues all play a role. When the rhythm is clear, the brain feels oriented. Orientation reduces uncertainty during the night. Less uncertainty means less checking behavior. That directly lowers nighttime awakenings. Another part involves correct nighttime signals. The brain relies on chemical messages after sunset. Melatonin should rise smoothly and remain stable. Cortisol should stay low until morning approaches. When these signals align, the brain relaxes. Alert systems lose their reason to stay active. The 3 a.m. brain survival response quiets down. Internal support to the brain also matters. The nervous system needs specific conditions to calm. This includes nutritional and environmental signals, not stimulation, but gentle reassurance, signals that say the body is safe and supported. When those signals are present, resistance fades. The brain stops scanning and starts resting. None of this requires forcing sleep to happen. It requires helping the brain trust the night again. Trust is built through repetition and consistency. Small signals repeated nightly carry weight. Over time, the brain learns there is no threat. That learning opens the door to deeper sleep. Now we can begin to talk about what provides that support. That's where certain foods and natural supports come in, not as a treatment or a quick fix, but as a way to gently support the brain at night. Sleep science shows the brain responds to what it receives consistently, especially during the hours when signals are most sensitive. The right support helps reinforce safety cues, and safety is what allows alert mode to turn off. These supports work by complementing natural sleep processes. They do not force the body into unconsciousness. They do not stimulate or sedate the nervous system. Instead, they align with how the brain already functions. Their role is to support balance, not override biology. This makes them easier for the brain to accept. Acceptance is key for long-term calm at night. Many of these supports come from simple, familiar sources, foods the brain recognizes and knows how to use, natural compounds that work gently in the background, nothing aggressive or habit-forming, nothing that shocks the system into sleep, just steady signals that reinforce nighttime stability. This approach respects the brain's intelligence. Because this support is natural, it tends to feel safer. Safety lowers resistance in the nervous system. Lower resistance means less nighttime alerting. Over time, the brain stops anticipating disruption. That anticipation is what drives the 3 a.m. response. When it fades, sleep becomes deeper and more continuous. This is how support creates change without force. It's important to see this as complementary support, not a replacement for healthy sleep habits, not a promise of perfect sleep every night, but a way to help the brain feel supported, especially during the hours when awakenings usually happen. This perspective keeps expectations realistic and calm. Calm expectations support calm nights. You can find the full list and support option in the first pinned comment below. Everything is laid out clearly and simply there, so you can review it at your own pace. No pressure and no urgency, just information and gentle guidance. Next, we need to reframe what this approach truly means for you. You're not broken. You're not weak. Your brain is not failing you. It is responding to signals the only way it knows how. Nighttime alert mode is a learned state. Learned states can always be adjusted. That understanding alone brings relief. When people stop blaming themselves, tension drops. Less tension sends a different signal to the brain. Calm tells the nervous system there is no emergency. Safety allows sleep systems to take the lead again. This shift does not require effort or struggle. It begins with support, not control. That difference matters more than most realize. Supporting the brain means giving it consistent cues that say night is predictable and safe. Repetition is more powerful than intensity. Small changes done nightly build trust. Trust is what quiets the survival response. This is how biology prefers to work, gently, steadily, without force. The invitation here is simple and pressure-free. Support your brain for a few nights. Pay attention without judging the outcome. Notice how awakenings change if they do. Notice how mornings feel over time. Observation keeps the brain relaxed. Relaxation keeps alert mode from returning. There is no promise being made here, no demand for perfect sleep, only an opportunity to work with your biology, to replace fear with understanding, to replace force with support. That mindset alone changes nighttime signals. Signals is what the brain listens to most. When signals change, responses often follow, not instantly, but consistently. This is how new patterns begin, with safety, clarity, and patience. The night does not need to be a battle. It can become a learning process instead, and that process is where the next step begins.